call the meeting of the Templeton Board of Selectmen to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item that we have on today's agenda is our town administrator report. Ms. Marco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You are already aware that we have a request for proposals posted on the Central Register for general insurance, building and liability insurance. Holly has informed me that we have some interest and some inquiries, so that by the end of this month, we should have bids, and we expect to make a decision whether to stay with the existing carrier or, if we have a better deal for the same amount of insurance, to make a change. Health insurance, we had another meeting of the IAC and others, the enlarged IAC on March 30th. I think I can describe the consensus at the meeting that the employees seem to prefer to continue with the existing carrier, which is Blue Cross Blue Shield, which is contracted with Maya, the offshoot of the Mass Municipal Association. But there's a realization that we can't sustain 8.9% increases in our premiums. And so we discussed measures that could be taken that would bring down that increase. We had Lou Paradis here, who was our representative at Maya, and he offered a couple of ideas. One of them, which would mean changing the plan design modestly, would get the increase down to 3%. And we also heard a suggestion that would bring the increase down to less than 1%. I got a response on that today, so that is an option. We've also asked for bids. And thus far, Fallon Network has submitted a bid for the same benefit package. They are offering a 2.7% increase. If we wanted to look at the package that we're currently talking about under Blue Cross Blue Shield, that would mean actually a reduction in our premiums for health insurance. So we're going to take that up at the next meeting, which is Wednesday, of this group. I've invited anyone who's any interested employee who wants to attend and offer their views. We still do not have a representative of the retirees attending, so we got another letter in today expressing an interest in serving on that committee. So I think we're moving forward and should be in a position to make a decision, certainly in time for the May 1st deadline. And one other piece of information: Blue Cross Blue Shield will occasionally bid directly. In other words, outside the Maya network. We got word from them today that they're not interested in bidding outside the Maya network, so for our business. So that's where we are. Work on reconstruction of our fiscal 2013 accounting records continues. The town accountant is now working 40 hours per week. The FY16 budget has taken most of the time since we last met here, and there are some minor modifications which I'll go over with you later on tonight. Also continuing work on the draft warrant for the annual town meeting. Also continuing the search for a building inspector. New candidate came in today, and so I'm hoping we can get someone as our building inspector before too long. Also conducted negotiations today with Local 39 on a contract. That's the Highway Department and the Water Department. I will be negotiating with the police union and the dispatchers on Wednesday, the 8th. The application for special Chapter 90 pothole money has been submitted to the state. And also, as you know, we've discussed reconstruction and complete reconstruction of Royalston Road. That's going to cost a lot of money. The town will not be able to afford that. It'll have to go on to the Transportation Improvement Program, the TIP, and be approved by the Metropolitan Planning Organization. We do not currently have a representative at the Montechusett Regional Planning Commission. I think it'd be a good idea to have someone representing the town there and being in a position to, to advocate for the town eventually when this project comes before the Metropolitan Planning Organization, which is just an offshoot of MRPC. So we need a presence there. So if the board could find someone who could attend the meetings and represent the town, this is a good time to do it. As I mentioned, Bud and I have discussed this. It's going to cost a significant amount of our Chapter 90 money to do the design or the redesign of Royalston Road. He's having someone in on this week, Thursday, to start that process. Anything else you want to tell them?
What she explained to me is we'll meet on a one-to-one this Thursday at 10 o'clock. We'll go over boilerplate type engineering program. She's going to view the road with me, and then she's going to bring back an engineer to meet with me again and to discuss a cost or an estimated cost of what it's going to cost to do a full depth rebuild of Royalston Road, which that's what it really is.
And this is going to be a 5-year project, maybe longer, because once the engineering is done, which we have to pay for, we've got to get it onto the TIP, and that won't be easy, but I think we can get the project onto TIP funding in a couple of years, and then funding should come through 5-6 years maybe. But it's a big project. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. I have also budget and warrant information, but that comes later on the agenda.
I had a couple of follow-up questions. Were we going to work on the drainage on Otter River Road? There was that section that wasn't done last year, I believe.
Yeah, we can open up that discussion if you wish to. We're not going to use all our Chapter 90 funding for Royalston Road this year. It's going to start out in blocks like we have in the previous year. So we'll have some additional funds in Chapter 90 to do some other projects. Whether the Board of Selectmen wants to focus on Otter River Road drainage, that was going to be another costly project because of the road crossing. We can no longer use a pipe any longer. It has to be a box culvert. And last indicated that was going to be about $150,000 to set that in place, according to Weston and Sampson. We did have some dialogue with Weston and Sampson, but we kind of put it on hold because of budget things. So we can look at that. And there are a couple of other streets that I'm looking at, rebuilding that wouldn't drain our Chapter 90, but are much needed because of the cost of keeping the road in some kind of drivable condition. And I had a conversation with Bob about our pothole money, and it's my recommendation to Bob that we utilize that money to continue the next phase on 101 East Templeton, to mill it and overlay it. We went from the center of East Templeton to Graves Concrete, and I'd like to extend that from Graves Concrete I've called for a vendor to come in to work some numbers up with me so we know where we sit. But, finish the project so that main road will be done, and it'll be done for years. It's starting to break up pretty good down the other end of it, so it's only going to get worse real fast. So that's my recommendation. I'd like to see that project completed before we start using pothole money somewhere else and have two ongoing projects. But if the board has different ideas, I'm happy to listen.
Are there any other questions for Bud? Okay, thank you very much. The next item that we have on the agenda is to approve or not approve minutes. The first set of minutes we have are from March 2nd of 2015. Do I have a motion regarding these minutes?
So moved.
Do I have a second to approve the minutes?
Second.
First and a second, any discussion or corrections? Okay, Julie?
Yes.
Doug?
I'll abstain.
John?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
And I will vote yes. Next are the minutes from the meeting of March 9th, 2015. Do I have a motion to approve these minutes?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a first and second. Any further discussion?
Ken?
Yes, sir.
The Crow Hill Motor Park is a little vague. What specific permit did we approve?
They have, it's a track permit, correct? Just, is that
Operating a track.
operating a track permit? I think that's what it's called.
Well, and I would like to see that reflected in the minutes, what exactly.
Okay. Okay, so we'll add the exact name of that permit in there. Is there anything else regarding these minutes? Do I have a motion to approve? Or did we already do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did that, okay. Julie?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
And I vote yes with the amendment. Next are our minutes from March 23rd, 2015.
I make a motion to approve the minutes for March 23rd, 2015.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Julie?
Yes.
Doug?
I'll abstain.
John?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
And I will vote yes. Okay. And that's the last set of minutes that we have. The next item we have on the agenda is appointments.
I put that for that letter, I didn't know.
Oh, okay.
You guys wanted to-
Has this been posted by chance on the website? Kind of an open call for retirees, do we know
No,
at this
nobody
point?
asked me to do that.
Oh, no, that's fine, I just wanted to mention, yeah,
Okay.
no, I wasn't,
No.
no, if no one, we may want to, because I know that we've gotten 2 letters now, so, we may want to actually have that posted on there for a week or 2, maybe until our next meeting, just to see if there's any other interest out there, which there may be none, but, just so people are aware that we are looking for a retiree representative. Does anyone have an opinion about that, or?
I thought we had another letter too for something from Jerry Skelton.
We do, yeah, this was just the
so this is
recent
the second one.
Yes, the second
Okay.
one we've gotten. So-
I think as a matter of policy, any opening like this there should be some notice on the
Okay, great.
website.
So we can get that on the website, and then we'll add it to our next agenda. Just make a note. Next is action on approval of adjusted hours for the Council on Aging bookkeeper.
Diana.
Diana, yes.
A couple of months ago, the town accountant and town treasurer asked Pam to work with Alan to do his payroll and his vendor warrants. So Pam and Alan talked, and it was agreed that they would do those. In order to do that, Pam has to have extra time to do that. So she started working on that. I approved the extra hours. And then I was told that I couldn't pay her for those extra hours without your approval. The money is in the budget. Even if we pay her 19 and a half hours for the rest of the year, there will still be extra money in that account.
Okay.
So I would like approval to do that. Additionally, my food pantry coordinator on occasion needs to work a couple extra hours a week. For instance, 2 weeks ago, the Baldwinville Memorial Congregational Church had a food drive for her. They collected 1,597 pounds of food on Saturday. She had to be there to receive it. I was not allowed to pay her for the 2 hours that she worked. In order to fully compensate her, I'm going to have to close the food pantry for 2 hours during the week. I don't see how that serves the public. I need to be able to pay her for those 2 hours.
And can you do that out of the, just out of the
would
same?
be the same budget.
Okay, yeah.
It
And the
would
same,
not-
it's just coming right out of salaries, which, just to reiterate, we're paying a salary item out of the salary account line, so
Right,
it's just,
right.
okay.
And
Yep.
it will not run that
Don't review.
line item short. And by doing that, even if I paid Sue 2 weeks every week, which I don't propose to do, we would still have $13,221.97 left in that line item to turn back to the town. I need to be able to pay these people. I'm not going to ask them to donate.
Right, no. Are there any questions regarding these two items? We can vote on them separately or together, however anyone would like to. Yes, John?
Diana, the person that's doing the work for the cemetery department, correct? And you're asking that the additional hours be paid out of what account?
Out of,
Out of what account are you?
it'll have to be out of the Council on Aging, and her job description will have to be adjusted in order to allow that to happen,
Right.
just as it happened in the,
So you have enough money in that account to absorb this?
yes.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? Okay. Do we have a motion to approve, to make the necessary changes to the job description, if needed, and to approve paying for the additional hours that have been requested?
So moved.
First-
Second.
Second, first and a second, is there any further discussion? Yes.
Did you just say, did we just have a motion to change the job description?
Is it necessary to do that in order to?
No,
No.
no, we're just talking about the number of hours. I don't think we have to change the job description.
Okay.
So,
Move to strike.
We said if necessary, it's not necessary, so it
He
doesn't
said-
need to, yeah. Yep. Okay. Was there any further discussion? Yes.
I just have a question. I know from an HR standpoint, Alicia and Kate have been trying to work on getting any changes specific in the letters to go in the file and to be in there so they're
Mhm.
paid what they're supposed to be paid. Could we amend the motion to be exact? They can get up to this many hours for each person, so we can do those letters specifically and have a vote behind it?
Yeah, well, what was it's just 2 hours for once, right?
I'm
for the-
asking for 2 hours for Sue, but her actual job description that she signed says that it's up to 19 and a half hours.
Okay, so that,
I'm
So
not
she doesn't-
proposing that we pay her that much, but that's
Oh.
how her job description reads.
Gotcha.
I am proposing that we pay Pam 19 and a half hours,
As opposed to what?
15.
Oh, okay. So that's a change then.
Right, the permanent one to kind of fill in the gap there.
And that, if I'm understanding the new HR procedures correctly, that would require a change form.
yeah, we're doing a change form in a letter, so it's just really clear that the board voted, this is what it is.
Right.
It's in their file, the accountant and the treasurer have it, just so
Yeah, I'll send a
all the
change
bases are
form.
covered. Okay.
Is there any further discussion?
But that would require a change in her job description, would it not? That she's
No,
going to be...
he said no.
No, okay. So just like helping and that's it?
Or-
Doing whatever?
I think it's because she's doing the same type of task. There's,
Okay, I'm just making sure.
I know there's so many procedures.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else?
Um,
Yes.
What is the motion?
The motion is to pay the 2 hours one time to the food pantry employee to pay her, which we have to by law anyway, for work that she did. And then that's a one-time payment. And then also to increase the weekly number of hours for the COA bookkeeper to 19 and a half hours, which is an increase from her current level. And you said she works 15 now, from 15 to 19 and a half. And this would just be for the remainder of this fiscal year, basically, in essence. For now, right, yeah. So do we have an amended first and amended second, too?
I just wanted to clarify, for the food pantry, it's just a one-shot deal for 2? Or is it?
Is that ever going to happen again? I mean, what if you,
Yeah,
I don't
because
think we
they're all
can say
food
one
drives.
time. Because
Yeah.
I'm sure that will happen again
It
as
will
people
happen
do more fundraising, and it usually does include the food pantry here and there, so saying one time is probably not a good idea.
Well, I'm
but
not
to be able
limiting
to
it,
pay her.
but I'm saying it should be on, what was presented to me is this is a specific situation that happened, and now yes.
You said it's in the budget for her to get 19 and a half
No,
hours?
no, the job description was
The job
19 and a half
description.
hours.
Well, so why would you have to get the additional 2 hours?
Because I wasn't allowed to pay her more than 10 hours, because I don't know what she was hired at.
Yes, Kate?
My understanding was that she was hired at 10 hours a week, and that's why the discrepancies were coming up.
Gotcha. And how much does she actually work now?
She works generally 10 hours a week.
10 hours, okay,
But
yeah.
there are
And that's
weeks when
what
she's going to work more than that.
My understanding was she was budgeted for that, and that's why it was all came up.
So there is not money to pay her on an ongoing basis?
No.
Right,
I don't.
right.
There is extra money in that line
Right.
item.
So that's why we're not doing it on a permanent basis, because the money's not there to do it permanently. It's just, so if another incident like this arises, then obviously we would have to look at where the budget to actuals actually are and to see if there's money that is still in there that, that we can pay her.
If the need were there, I have enough money to pay her every week. I'm not going to do that. But if another food drive comes up, I need to have the ability to pay her.
So then the motion would be different, because we're talking about a permanent ability to,
Say up to 12 or 13 hours as needed?
Just as needed, yeah. Because it can't exceed the 19,
right?
which is in the job description. So,
But at the same token, if how it was presented in the budget was 10 hours a week, do we feel comfortable authorizing an almost doubling of that for the rest of the, if necessary, but still, that's what we're authorizing, is basically an almost doubling of the number of hours. It seems like a kind of a broad increase. I mean, that's just my personal opinion, but,
Well, we need to pay her the hours that she worked.
right, which is why I thought, yeah.
So I guess if it happened again, then you just have to come back.
Okay?
I mean, unless the motion is
Until-
different.
Let's pay her for this one.
And then
In the
talk about how
meantime,
to,
talk about some type of policy or procedure to
Yeah.
deal with it on an ongoing basis, so you won't have to come back every time. But we'll just do this one
so the motion
tonight.
stands as it is.
Right.
The one time and then the.
So it's 2 hours one time, but the CO bookkeeper is for the remainder of fiscal 15, 19 and a half hours. Sure. And so that's the first and the second? We're
Yeah.
copacetic? Okay.
we're good.
Okay, any further discussion? Julie?
Yes.
Doug? Abstain. John?
Yes,
Diane?
Yes.
And I will vote yes. So thank you very much. So I will turn the meeting back over to our town administrator, as our next item is fiscal year 2016 budget and our add-back list that we've been provided.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. And if the minutes could show that Doug is recusing himself as well.
The approach, as far as the fiscal 16 budget, is to create an omnibus budget which accounts for all of the general fund spending of the town for all the purposes. And for my own purposes, to keep track of spending, I think it's easier. And so, among other things, I've moved a couple of items that used to be on the warrant into the budget. Those include the allocation for VADAR, which is the accounting software. No reason why we need a warrant article for that, so that's moved into the budget. Assessors mapping, no reason for an article there, that went into the budget. Harper's is already in the budget. Also, I moved into the budget 40 hours for our town accountant, since we've all agreed that this would be needed in order to reconstruct the records for fiscal 13 and perhaps some for 14. I have not funded the snow and ice deficit in this budget for two reasons. Number one, we still have the prospect of getting all but $3,000 of that deficit covered by FEMA. We've applied. There is an emergency declared by the governor. I'm hopeful that we'll get it all covered that way. Also, the governor has signed legislation that allows cities and towns, if they choose, to fund any snow and ice deficit for fiscal 15 over a 3-year period. If we want to use that provision, we could do that as well without any great pressure on the town's finances. This year, we did cover a deficit of $51,000 on the tax recap, and that would be another approach to it. So I don't think we're going to have to fund this deficit through the operating budget. So I've already gone over health insurance. Also, upon the recommendation of the advisory board, I've combined fuel accounts. So diesel and gasoline are now one account. I guess it was that way in the past, and then it somehow changed, probably because of the tax issues. So it's back to one account, which gives the highway superintendent flexibility, and it doesn't lock him into two separate line items there. So also, I should point out that when we get to the add-back list, I just talked to Bud. He may want to explain this further. Our MS4 permit is coming out, stormwater permit. And he was informed today that we're going to have 90 days to comply, and that there's a recommendation from a consultant that we should put $20,000 into the budget for 16 in order to comply with the MS4 regulations from the federal government. So I don't have that in the budget right now. And one other item. We have found that the revenue that the town receives from the town of Phillipston for dispatch services has not been included or counted as revenue. And interestingly, the dispatch budget, which was level funded, is underfunded. And so I talked with the chief today. We got some more information, and so I would recommend that we include the $54,107 that we receive from the town of Phillipston for providing dispatch services, recognize it as revenue, and also add some funds to the dispatch budget, which is going to run short. So that hasn't been done because it just happened today. If I can run through this quickly, I could highlight some issues here.
Sure.
Starting with, Selectmen. You'll note that the audit expense in 15 was $54,000. It goes down to $28,000. That's what we are normally going to have to pay for an audit. So this would cover the audit for fiscal 15. Town accountant, as you can see, I included in the town accountant's salary an amount that would pay for 40 hours of her work. assessor's mapping, I've already mentioned, we put this into the budget. The triennial certification will still be a warrant article. That's $30,000 per year for 3 years, because that permits the town to put this away in a special account, which will not close out at the end of the year and become free cash. So we need to continue the warrant article there. The other items, no changes. Technology and telephone expenses, that was the telephone expense is going to go up $1,000, and that was after checking with the phone company. Also, for the town's technology expense, I did talk to Doug about this. He's been the lead person in terms of town hall technology since we moved over here. And there are some things that we continue to need in our technology area. By the way, we're going to expand the telephone system to the outlying departments, and that's going to have a cost. It's about $150 per instrument and $33 per month for the internet access that special internet access that we will need. In addition to that, we need our own server here and our own domain controller at Town Hall for security purposes. I think that's generally recognized as an issue, and so the monies that are in the 16 budget would in part go to fund a domain controller at Town Hall and a file server, perhaps even a email server. We need to buy the software for that. Doug estimated that the cost of doing that would be in the range of $15,000 to set the whole operation up there. Also, this would be a small expense, but we would like to provide Wi-Fi throughout Town Hall. It would be useful for us here as well as others who come into the building. In terms of, well, that's town technology expense. I've already mentioned to you that there is money on the add-back list for certifications for our accountant and treasurer collector, assistant treasurer collector. It could be recertification in some cases. Continuing on, you have on the add-back list a request from the planning department for $12,000 for the next phase of the updating of the master plan. Also, town building expenses. We went up on town building expenses because there are some things that we need to do. First and foremost, we need to build privacy fences to shield the adjacent residential areas from cars and headlights that are using the parking lot. We need to replace the attic windows, and very importantly, we need to add insulation in the attic in order to save on heating costs in this building. We have to repair the cupola. I would hope we can get that done without spending town funds, but that's a need, and it's in poor condition. Also, we need to cover over the areas in the basement where you have a dirt floor. That's where moisture can come up, and we don't want to have mold problems, and so we need to protect the basement against that and all the things we have down there. And also, we're recommending that if we have any funds, that we embark on a multi-year program to replace the carpeting in the building. And in the coming year, we would probably try to replace the hallway carpet, and then in future years, one by one, replace the carpeting in the various offices. This is what was done in the current year, obviously. So those are the expenses that we would anticipate for this building in the coming year. Town vehicles, as you can see, we've consolidated into one account. Insurance, I've been through that with you earlier. I am cautiously hopeful that we're going to be able to bring our costs there under control, and I'm hopeful that our general insurance, our liability insurance, through the rebid process is actually going to be reduced. Worcester County Retirement, Kelly has done a reconfiguration of our obligations. That is the town cost. That does not include the amounts that are paid by light and water and sewer. They contribute the funds to the town, and we bundle it and send it down to Worcester. Let's see. We can skip over. I think, well, I have some money on the add-back list to reestablish the tree warden position. Going a year is not too bad, but as you know, we wait much longer, then we're going to have some problems with some of the larger trees along the roadways. Mentioned snow and ice. There are no other changes since the last time I went over this with you. Veteran Services, obviously, that budget continues to increase because the benefit is going to returning vets in some cases, and that is the number that was recommended by the Veteran Services agent. Recreation Commission, there's money on the add-back list to reestablish the recreation programs. And looking at miscellaneous expenses, I did tell you earlier that I put some money aside for other post-employment benefits, OPEB, making a start on that. I also listed the warrant article there for the assessor's reval. That's going to be a general fund cost, so I included that there just so we will know all the spending that's going on out of the general fund in one document. Debt service, as you can see, we have a favorable number there. And then lastly, the school assessments, I did include the entire amount requested by Narragansett Regional School District. And the number that I have there for Montechusett, Monte is a number that was suggested in a phone call to the business office over there, based on the number of students that we have.
Oh, gotcha.
So
actually
that,
went down.
I hope that's a good number. And as you can see, with a couple of changes, including adding in the additional expenses for our town accountant and so forth, that's reduced the available funding to $299,550. And also, I think we may want to hear from Bud about what the information he got today on our MS4 permit. As most people know, the federal government has handed down an unfunded mandate to improve the disposal of wastewater of all kinds. I mean, of stormwater. We did wastewater back in the 70s and 80s. Now this is stormwater. There's a difference, though. Back in the 70s, when the EPA came out and said you have to improve the quality of the water that you're discharging into ponds and lakes and streams and so forth, coming out of your wastewater plant, they required secondary treatment. I recall in the Connecticut Valley, they said it's going to cost $55 million to build a big treatment plant for the region. Oh, by the way, here's 50. And the state of Massachusetts said, oh, by the way, here's 5. And so that plant was built with state and federal money. Now the game is you have to spend the money, and oh, by the way, you pay for it. And so that's where we are with this MS4. It's an obligation, a mandate from the EPA in Washington, and cities and towns across the United States are going to have to pay for it themselves. So Bud is recommending, you're recommending 20?
That's what she indicated about 20, between 20 and 25, it should not exceed 25, because what she stated, Mrs. Barry Monahan Burgess, who actually worked for Tom and actually did our stormwater out of the gate, and she indicated to me today that Templeton is in really good shape compared to a lot of communities because of what we've already done. And we still have some new subdivisions, some new roads that the town has reconstructed and installed drainage that needs to be, the data needs to be put into the system, where the new outfalls are, how many catch basins and so on and so forth. But she really wanted to stress that we're in good shape, but when this new permit comes out, it's gonna have some new regulations. It's gonna take some footwork to be done, not as much as other communities, but for a budget number. And that, I know we talked, you spoke earlier about it, budgeting it in 2016. However, just to put you on notice that that could happen this fiscal year. It could happen as soon as the state releases. It could happen in April, May, June. It could happen and it could happen after June. She doesn't know, and if anybody knew, she would know.
Right, but we have 90 days to comply.
Once it's mailed to us, we have 90 days to comply with the
Right.
annual report that has to get in and some other information. They're not giving the towns or cities much leeway, as she indicated today. I'll learn more about that when she comes here on Thursday. We pretty much just broke the ice today about it. So just putting us on notice.
So $20,000,
Approximately.
that's what she's
Yeah,
recommending.
That should be on the add back list.
Yeah.
So here are the rules and here are the sanctions if you don't comply within 90 days.
Yeah.
It's not new to us. This happened to us once before where the state came and mandated and we had to do it. We had no options.
Yeah, we spent close to, I would say, $400,000 complying with the MS4 regulations that were in place back then. We do have a stormwater bylaw, so I don't know if that's going to be impacted by the new regulations, probably.
She'll need to look at a lot of that because the regulations are going to change and they're going to get stiffer for all the communities. What I raised my hand about when Bob talked about tightening up this building,
Oh, yeah.
one thing was not, I didn't hear mentioned was everything that he said is absolutely true, but all these windows in this building need to be looked at either by a professional or contractor or whatnot and tightened up. The plastic's not going to hold forever. It helped this year, but all these windows need to be evaluated and either resealed or replaced. And that's on all 3 floors, to include the basement. You're losing a lot of heat, but we made it through this winter in better shape, but just.
And thank you for your help with that this winter as well.
Whatever, we do what we gotta do, but just wanted to point that out.
I had a couple of comments or questions on the snow and ice that's not covered in FY15, which will impact FY16 if the funding from FEMA and the timing is off. I do not believe we should pay it forward for 3 years, the deficit that we have at this point. You're just borrowing trouble because we've only budgeted 125 for next year, and that's not going to be enough to get through next year. So it's just going to keep snowballing if you keep putting off dealing with it. So-
I mean, one approach here would be to hold back a big chunk of money and not add it back in, and maybe make a decision closer to the town meeting,
I
when
think,
we may have more information.
and I may be wrong too, I think that Diane Haley Brooks had mentioned this, earlier had mentioned a concern about raising possibly right at a previous open meeting, about raising the amount, because, I mean, it's never enough, right?
No.
It's always, I mean, it's basically an interest-free loan that we end up, I'm not saying interest-free is a good thing, because it's still a loan, because it comes out every year, then it comes out of our revenue. So, I mean, the absolute worst that happens if we over budget.
I think I had asked about raising it 25,000. I don't think,
Right.
I think that's what we had, I just mentioned it. And then I had talked to Bob about that, and then we were just waiting for all the other
Which might
kind of
be-
stuff.
yeah.
But it is true that it's never enough based on the last few years that I looked at.
It might be a good step to start.
So you're right.
It was at a higher number. I think it
But
was
then
up
if you
to-
don't use
It
it,
was 185.
It was 185 at one point in time, and then when we had the budget crisis, that number was reduced. And then when we found out when you reduce the number, then you can't,
you can't, right.
right. So if you keep it artificially low, it won't come back and bite you if we
Right.
have another fiscal downturn.
But I think having it too low is, like
Right.
you said, is causing a
Yeah.
problem too.
John?
I wouldn't make any decisions on this based on this year. I mean, I think the last time we had snow like this was 1934 or something like that.
Yeah.
Long before my time, but.
This year was excessive, but when you look back, even the other years, it was still way more than 125. So even raising it 25,000 is not astronomical. It's not too high and it's not too low.
Yeah, I think, and
I did do some research, and I discussed it with Bob too, but it's not, this year is totally out of whack for everybody.
yeah. Oh, yeah, I wouldn't recommend making it, what,
No.
the 235 or
No.
whatever it would have to be to ultimately
That's
pay it.
25,000.
But maybe like 25 grand might be a good increase, just because then there is, we're still definitely gonna spend it. And, but at least we're kind of, that's $25,000 less that we have to take off of our revenue
Right.
for the following fiscal year. So should we add that as a possible add back to be discussed and voted on?
Not that
Should
I
we
wanna
vote
do
on
that
whether to
after
vote on adding this back or no? I'll just add it to the
I
list,
think
and when we
just-
go through, we can speak, I'm sure, to Bud and some others about snow and ice. Were there other things, Julie? Did you-
No, that was, I think that was it. I made notes.
And we are going to still include Narragansett and Monty Tech on both the budget and in the warrant? It's still in the,
I spoke with the council this afternoon about that. We don't want to appropriate twice. That's your point.
Right,
In
so-
the budget and so forth, but that's the dilemma.
oh, okay.
I think it's important to have a budget that shows all the spending in all the departments in one document. And yet, we don't need the school articles
We don't.
because they're in the budget, if you keep them in the budget. And because we are going to accept, as trustees, some funds from the utilities departments to pay their debt and to pay Worcester County retirement, council recommends that we keep those articles, but that we configure the motion so that we don't appropriate twice for the town.
Gotcha. So this version that we have here is
Right.
the kind of the
Yes.
final?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I mean, the solution for the schools is to take those two articles out, because the monies for the debt and the monies for the assessments are right there in the budget document.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
That's how other towns I've had experience with, they put their school funds in the general operating budget. They don't have separate articles.
There's no argument, no real argument other than tradition to have separate articles.
Yeah.
So now that we have, we are left in a position now where even if we had decided that it would be a good idea to add everything back, which we obviously don't necessarily have to do, because anything that we don't allocate eventually will make its way into free cash in the future, we now have a situation in which our additional available revenue is $229,550. But with the addition of the MS4 and the snow and ice, we're up to,
Do you have 299 or do you?
It's $299, I thought.
Sorry.
oh, 299.
299.
299,550.
Yeah.
Minus the,
And adding those on, so, and we're looking at possible adding back $357,391 when you add the additional 25 from snow and ice, if we do that, and the additional 20,000 for the MS4. So we're looking at, roughly $60,000, $59,000 difference between what we could add back on, or what has been proposed to us, and what we actually have to add back on. I personally am not an advocate, but obviously however the board votes is how it is. I'm not an advocate for spending every penny of the $299,550 that we have, because we have, is there anything for stabilization in the,
No.
in this budget?
No.
There's another potential add-back item as well, as if we did want to vote any money into stabilization, which would obviously require a 2/3 vote to put in and a 2/3 vote to take out in the future, so we wouldn't keep that in mind, but would we like to discuss, now move on to some of the, because I know that we have various department heads that are here to speak on these items. Regarding the salary and wage increases, because I am sure that we are going to get flack from this. But I think, and as the town administrator has said several times, and I agree, it can be deceiving, people that work in other public sector jobs when they say that they haven't had a raise, when really what they mean is they haven't had an actual increase in their, or excuse me, they haven't had an increase in their kind of a, they haven't had a for good cause increase in their salary, but they have had step increases every year, and they have had cost of living adjustments, which, you know, if you work for the state or for other town departments other than what we're discussing here in this budget, may be the case. When we're talking about our town employees, we're saying that they haven't had, like, no pay increases of any kind, not step increases, not cost of living increases. For years, there's been no salary and wage increase. And other than, even if you were completely cold-hearted and said, oh, that's good, we want to have our taxes as low as possible, so who cares what the employees feel like? Even if you took that cold-hearted approach, which no one on the board, I'm sure, does, it is still bad business to continue to artificially hold those wages and salaries low, because then, as you see, we have the constant problems that end up costing us tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to deal with. We've lost our bond rating. We now are having to spend all this money to, rightly so, but to spending additional tens of thousands of dollars to reconstruct the books so they can even be audited. We don't have access to any of our free cash. And I would say most people would agree that a big factor to that is, you know, having 5 or 6 treasurers and accountants in the, course of 3 years, that you can't maintain any kind of stability when people are leaving that quickly. And one of the reasons that happens is that our salaries and wages are so much lower than surrounding towns. I'm not talking about comparing us to Arlington or Newton. I'm talking about comparing us to Winchington, Phillipston. What we pay on an hourly basis is lower than all of the surrounding communities. So in many cases, particularly with the police force, we pay to train new officers who then, as soon as they can make way for a better town, do, and you can't blame them. They're not working for a hobby. They're working to pay their bills and feed their families. So if you can make more money somewhere else, you can't blame them for that. So anyway, that was a very long-winded explanation as to why I personally think that the salary and wage increases that were presented to us, which total $58,000, are definitely warranted. They haven't happened in years, and the town and the taxpayers suffer financially for having such a high turnover rate. It just ends up biting us in the end. So those are my thoughts on those salary and wage increases. I know that was a priority for many of us, so I don't know if anyone else wants to speak on that, and if we want to vote, if I have a motion to vote on that particular item first, so we can kind of check that off, and then we know.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we add back salary and wage increases for $58,000.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a first and a second. And this affects all departments that are part of the general budget, over which we have control, or influence, I should say. Is there any further discussion on the wage and salary increases? If not, Julie?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So thank you. I don't know if Holly, if you could, or if someone wants to keep a running tally of things we voted off, or you have it, so.
We can do it.
Okay.
We're at 196550.
Oh, already, okay.
Well, no,
Because we haven't
no,
voted the
sorry.
MS4 yet or the other.
But it already went, hold on, at the 299 level?
Yep, so we're at 299,550, and we've subtracted 58,000. Yep, 241.
Oh, jeez.
Yep, 241550.
Okay. Would we like to discuss, and if anyone feels I'm giving these preferential treatment that they don't like, that's fine, because obviously as we vote on things, money goes away, so if anyone, speaking, it sounds like the MS4 is something that's outside of our control largely, and we really don't, even though we could use that 20 grand and fund half the other items in this budget, the budget increase, it seems like that's something that we have little say or control over. And this is the 20,000 for the stormwater certification that needs to be done. Do I have a motion regarding the $20,000, the amount suggested by the consultant to be added to the budget to cover that cost?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. First and a second, any further discussion? If not, Julie?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes.
221,550.
Okay. Are there any other items that any other selectmen, so I don't feel like yes.
May I make a suggestion? On this list, there's, on the position part, 'cause when it comes to adding either a position or hours back, there's a difference between positions that were cut, pre-existing positions, and new positions that are being proposed. May I suggest that the priority go to the cut positions, positions that were there prior and have been cut, as opposed to new positions, and that new positions move to the bottom, and then if there's money, those be taken up. Because they're totally brand new, weren't in the system prior. That might simplify things.
I'm looking here, so the ones that we would be restoring are tree warden, conservation commission, health agent. Is the highway department, is that a new employee or replacing?
Replacing.
Okay. How about, the new police position, is that a new position or
No.
replacing one? Replacing. And the fire EMS?
That's new.
That's
No.
new.
Yeah, I asked for that.
Oh, and the conservation commission, restoring the administrative
Yeah, you said
assistant.
that.
Oh, did I say it? Sorry, I didn't mark it down.
Store,
They have,
I'm sorry?
we have a conservation.
have that.
Being paid off budget, though.
Oh, they are, oh.
She's the one that.
Yeah, from that fund,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, it's 3,200 for the year, that particular position. Does anyone have a motion or would like to discuss one of these items?
Okay, so if we're talking about positions that were deleted, then I think within this list, I had a few add-back items that were not on here, and one of them was an admin assistant for Alan. And Diane, if you don't mind, when I did my add-back list, I called Alan first, and then I called Diana, and I asked if it was already had been talked about her, Pam, which you just increased her hours, to work with Alan, but I would like to ask for that to be on a more permanent basis, and that was just bringing her hours up. It doesn't add any health care, it doesn't, and it's something that she's willing to do, and that I believe everyone, and a lot of the department heads agree that he needs somebody. So if we could somehow add, I don't know what the dollar amount is for that, but it's, in the job description would have to be done to accommodate that in the following year.
I have the dollar amount.
And the other part was, well, you already have the janitor, so this would be a new position, but I also I'm just gonna out with it. The 10-hour maintenance position, I had just asked Diana and Bob too, does it really need to be 10 hours? Probably not. And could they just add a few hours onto the custodian for the COA and share between that building and this building and maybe another building? So maybe not adding the whole 10 hours, but another, Diana, what did we talk about? I'm sorry, because I didn't even keep any of my notes. It would be another how many hours? Like maybe 5 at best?
No more than 9.5.
Okay, so I don't know if all that's needed, but to just
If you added.
add a placeholder.
9.5, it would be, for him, it would be $11,431.
Okay, so there's, so instead of creating
In addition
a
to
whole
what?
nother for a separate place, to just, you already have somebody, so to really kind of, so those are really, that one's a new one, but adding for Alan is somebody who had gotten cut. And it's not even adding back all 20 hours, it's adding back 5 a week.
Well,
So
4.5,
not
right?
Yeah, it's like
4.5
not even.
hours.
So it's not on a weekly or 20-hour basis, it's just a few extra hours. So if that could somehow be in this list, those were a couple of my things.
And did you say you had the dollar amount for that, Diana?
Yeah, 19.5 hours. For Tom, it would be $11,431. We currently pay him 10 hours, which is $5,862.06.
Okay. And what about the 4.5 hours?
For Pam,
Yeah. Do we know what her hourly is?
her hourly is $12.33.
So 12.33 times 4.5. So that would be,
19 and a half hours.
right, but the
It's-
change would
Yours is
just
already
be 4 and a
included in
half.
your budget, so we just need to know the difference, because you already have that in your budget.
15 hours, so
Yeah.
it'd be another
So another
4.5
yeah.
hours.
Yeah, so it would be $55.49 a week would be the difference.
And what's the
And
difference
it doesn't
between
add back in benefits, so that would be a total of $2,886 rounded up to the nearest dollar. And that would be the 4.5 hours at $12.33 an
No
hour.
benefit.
Right, no benefit, right, $12.33 an hour, 4.5 hours a week, 52